Hello everybody and welcome to Card of the Week, the show on the Playing Board Games channel where I talk about a different Arkham card every week. If you don't know how it works, I roll a card and I'm only going to re-roll them if it's a card I've already talked about. Otherwise, we just take that card and we talk about it for 10 to 15 minutes depending on how fiery it makes me. I'm going to be here on my third favorite website, Arkham Build, and we're going to see what card we go and then we're going to get started. Chainsaw! Wow, this is a fun one. This is a 4-cost, 4-experience survivor card that takes up 2 hand slots. It uses 3 supplies. As an action, spend 1 supply, fight. You get +2 fist and deal +2 damage for this attack. If this attack fails, either place 1 supply on Chainsaw or deal 1 damage to the attacked enemy. So I think that, like, in terms of the weapons that exist in real life, this is probably the flashiest weapon in the entirety of Arkham Horror, right? There's also like a lot of tropes involving the chainsaw where it's like, you know, like Ash from Evil Dead with his chainsaw arm. There's, I believe, a chainsaw in Doom or in one of the games that are like Doom adjacent. And you just get to run around and cut up monsters with a chainsaw. It's a very fun, like, tropey fantasy to have in these kind of like pulpy action games, and it was really cool to see this actually come into Arkham Horror the card game, because this existed in things like Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Eldritch Horror, where you were able to use a chainsaw to cut up enemies, and like in those games in Arkham Horror, the chainsaw is a very, very powerful and flashy effect. It also works best as in the survivor class, because the survivors are known as the class that just uses the weapons that they have available to them to quote unquote survive. That's where the survivor name comes from. They're just slapping together what they have to make work. A big thing as well, you probably know this, but I'm going to tell you just in case you don't. The survivor class for the longest time had a very interesting quirk for how their player cards were designed. If you know what it is, let me know. Say it right now. But if you don't, they only had cards that were level 0, level 1, level 2, and level 3 for the majority of this early game's lifetime. So this was in the Stella Clark deck, which I believe came out either before Innsmouth or before Dream Eaters. I actually don't remember the exact date, but I think it's sometime within that window. So that means we got at least Dunwich, at least Carcosa, at least the Forgotten Age, and I'm pretty sure at least the Circle Undone, of 4 sets where every other class was getting experience cards in level 4 and 5, but survivors were capping out at 3. This was an inherent design choice from the designers to have it so that survivors were kind of like making use with what they had, and like they were kind of like lower to the ground in terms of class identity. This, of course, came with its own baggage problems that we are not talking about in this video because we're talking specifically about Chainsaw. But Stella Clark saw Chainsaw, a level 4 card, and then also Quick Learner, a level 4 card as well. And the level 5 card I think didn't come out until Dark Horse and Feast of Hemlock Vale. I could be wrong on that. Don't sue me if I am, please. I don't have a lot of money. It's not worth your time. But this was an exciting time and a very notable time for Survivor players to be like, ooh, we have a big, big, flashy card. And if you look at the design of Chainsaw, you can actually see that there is this really big kind of follow through with the Survivor class, and then also the Stella Clark box set, which was like, the idea is you are failing and like you're failing forward. So we also saw like the Derringer, the gun that reloads itself, and that carries through into the Chainsaw here, where if you fail, you get to either deal 1 damage to the attacked enemy, so you're basically still just like getting the hit in. It's kind of like following the oops, lucky, dumb luck, the look what I found kind of train, where it's like no matter what, this hits. Or you're going to place the supply back on. This means that you as a player, if you fail against an enemy with only 1 health left, it's like you pass the test and the enemy is just dead. The supply is still spent, the enemy is gone. You don't really care how you trigger it. But what's really fun is when you're able to combine this with cards like Live and Learn that let you retry tests. So you could fail with Live and Learn, put the supply back on, probably do that over pinging the enemy, but you could still ping the enemy, and then you could play Live and Learn to take that shot again. You don't need to spend the additional supply, so you actually could also potentially come up 1 supply from the attack and still hit, and then you could deal the damage to that enemy, and 3 damage, turns out, is a lot of damage. It will nullify like most enemies, and what's really nice is it's great at killing 2 health enemies because 3 damage is greater than 2 health. It's incredible at killing 3 health enemies because 3 health equals 3 damage, but Chainsaw is also very good at taking out 4, 5, and 6 health enemies in a way that a lot of weapons aren't, right? So if you have if you're going up against a 4 health enemy, you hit on the first attack, no matter what on the second attack, hit or miss, the enemy is dead, which is something that doesn't sound particularly powerful, but you have to trust me that having that assurance in that sort of attack is very good for you as a player to be able to fine-tune and make the correct decisions in that moment. For a 5 health enemy, it's like hitting a 4 health enemy with a 2 damage weapon. It's dead in 2. 6 health, same sort of thing. Chainsaw is a very efficient killer. It does carry some slight baggage, where in the survivor class, supplies, it's like the limited uses can really kind of add up in the way that they can't in like the guardian class with weapons, because for example, it's a lot easier to replace like an upgraded 45 automatic or an upgraded 41 Derringer. These are just cards that are on the screen, so that's why I'm saying them, in the rogue and the guardian class compared to a 4 cost, 4 experience chainsaw in the survivor class. This is kind of nullified slightly by the fact that this uses supplies instead of ammo, which means that anything that refills supplies, which admittedly is limited, I think, to mostly just things like Emergency Cash 3 and a few other like story assets. I think there's some that can do it, and maybe a few other random cards I'm forgetting, but the thing that makes up for it is that Emergency Cash 3, I think it fills up 4 supplies. So that's like a really good thing where if you don't need the supplies, it's still 3 money. But if you do need the supplies, you can reload this to a chainsaw and then like a little bit extra, a little bit of an extra kiss. Now, again, this 3 supplies kind of go a little bit longer in the long run because of the fact that if you do fail, they're on there. So like you're essentially in theory guaranteeing 9 damage with the chainsaw over a number of attacks. It's the same sort of thing with the Derringer. The Derringer level 0 is guaranteeing 4 damage. The Derringer level 2 is guaranteeing 6 damage. The chainsaw is guaranteeing 9 damage. These sort of effects, again, should not be underestimated, to just like guarantee you play the chainsaw, and assuming you don't lose it, you use all the supplies, you know that the chainsaw dealt 9 damage. Now, all of this nice, good stuff about chainsaw is carrying a slight little bit of baggage. And the thing for that is that ultimately, chainsaw was kind of just outclassed in the survivor class when it came to them getting the upgraded fire extinguisher. Before chainsaw, survivors never really had like a good weapon to fight with, right? They were kind of just like making it by with baseball bat for a time, and then Dunwich Legacy brought the fire axe, and they were able to like start using that. Fire axe had the problem where it used all their resources, so they were kind of just forced into like spending their resources, which kind of then put them directly into Dark Horse, so they were kind of trapped into a box. And then Forgotten Age came out, and Time Worn Brand actually became the weapon of choice for the Survivor class. There were a lot of Silas decks early on that would actually lean more on lean more on Time Worn Brand than Chainsaw. So, like, you can see kind of the issue here that I talked about with the supplies, right? Where in this game, because enemies are relentless, and in Drowned City they are literally relentless, you have to kind of always have an answer to enemies. And while Chainsaw can guarantee 9 damage, it doesn't guarantee 12 damage. It doesn't guarantee 15 damage because you either need to replace the chainsaw or reload it. But Time Worn Brand doesn't guarantee that damage, but ensures that over a longer number of turns, it's more likely to hit a higher damage threshold than Chainsaw for just a one-action play, and you don't need to worry about anything else. Not to mention the Time Worm brand also has the supercharged magic paddle attack that also is very good because it draws cards. Now, this then hit like the crescendo, as I mentioned, with like Survivor getting the fire extinguisher, because the new upgraded fire extinguisher is actually just like a melee weapon that's like on par with Machete without like the rider of having the extra like only one enemy engaged with you. And like, it might sound like for a Survivor class, paying 3 experience for just a melee weapon that gives you +1 fist and +1 damage is too much. But Survivors can look at that and be like, I can now play this weapon. I do not need anything else because I've been jumping through hoops for years to just ensure that my damage is consistent. And the fire extinguisher now says, I don't need to do that. I can just hit. We look at all the other Survivor fighters and they lean on their off classes. Like Will Yorick is going to lean on his guardian weapons. He's probably using Machete. Will Yorick can use Chainsaw. We've seen Will Yorick decks use Active Desperation on their Chainsaw to then replay the Chainsaw, and those loops are really good. So Chainsaw ultimately will always have a home, but because fighters demand consistent fighting, especially at lower player counts, Chainsaw ultimately, while impressive and flashy and has a lot of upsides, is just kind of like most firearms, because this technically kind of is a firearm. It has limited uses. It's outclassed by just general melee weapons. I'd be very curious to see a Chainsaw designed with today's sentiment, because the philosophy on the design for limited uses has changed quite a bit from the time of Stella Clark's release. I'd love to see a new Chainsaw. I think it would be pretty cool. Chainsaw is a fun card. I know someone, a certain someone watching as I'm recording this is thinking, hey, didn't you say you were going to play a Silas deck with Chainsaw and the Ghastly Possession? And you know what? I did say that. But then I realized with Silas, it's kind of still just better to just play a fire extinguisher. As what always happens with me, there's a lot of cool ideas that just get like replaced with the most efficient ones. And that's kind of what I see when I look at Chainsaw. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this card of the week. I can't wait to see you for the next one. It's always a little bit fun and a little bit scary when I roll the card to see what I'm going to be talking about. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.